Welcome to First Strike here on VSiN. I'm your host, Dave Ross. For the next hour, we're going to break down all things associated with UFC 282 and what a pay-per-view card this could be. Lou Finocchiaro is going to join me here in a matter of moments. Jordan Sherwood is going to join us as well. Dan Vreeland and Kuhn to round out this hour. But without further ado, let's get to the man of the hour, Lou Finocchiaro here. Follow him on Twitter as I do, @GamBlue. And again, the host of the Bout Business Podcast. Lou, great to have you on. You and I talk on Tuesdays on First Strike, First Look. We try to get ahead of those numbers and see how they have shifted. It feels like all the money is coming in on Magomed Ankalaev here in the main event against Jan Blachowicz. Do you like the way that this line is starting to move? Do you think there's a live dog scenario here in this main event?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I love this show, and I love to watch the other handicappers and you interact. I think the fight was probably opened a little tighter than it should have been. And while I want to give Jan Blachowicz as much possible respect as I can, I do think is more than a 2-to-1 favorite and about a 3-to-1 favorite. So I think that the current price is reflective of these two guys' skills, given the fact that Blachowicz has more experience. He also has more wear and tear on the tread.
Yeah, absolutely. He does at 39 years of age against Ankalaev here at 30 here for the light heavyweight title bout here. When you look at stylistically what we think we're going to see in this matchup, and again, that gets the pathway of victory, and certainly when we get to the total rounds, do you think this is going to be a long night here? Do you think it could be, if the favorite, now minus 330 that we see here at DraftKings, you see it priced here 3.5 rounds for this potential 5-round light heavyweight title matchup? The over minus $1.05, the under minus $1.25, which leads you to believe that the matchmakers out here believe at least that maybe this is an early and easy work for Ankalaev here. Do you lean towards the under or the over?
I lean to giving Jan his credit, and I think that translates into a fight that could easily, that should go over 3.5, maybe even to decision. I really like the price on Ankalaev inside the distance, but I don't think that gives Jan his due respect. And for that reason, I lean more to Ankalaev in a straight bet. And I do believe that the fight goes more than a couple of rounds for sure.
All right. So again, that over right now, minus $1.05. Ankalaev by decision, by the way, is plus 215 if people don't want to lay that big price tag of 330, if you think you can get to all 5, and Ankalaev, the younger fighter by 9 years, if he can get his arm raised in victory. There are so many fights in this fight card, Lou, here. Certainly when you get to a pay-per-view card that you go, could be fight of the night. But when you look at Bryce Mitchell against Ilia Topuria here, Thug Nasty back in that octagon as a small dog to Topuria here, this does feel like in the featherweight division, it could be the fireworks for potential 3 rounds. How do you view this, and do you think Thug Nasty should be the small dog?
I think it should be lined as tight as it is. If I'm the bookmaker, and I'm glad I'm not, I'm lining Thug Nasty a little bit of a favorite. I think he's been in with better. He's taller, longer, and I think his 3-year age advantage, 28 to 25, translates to maturity. So I lean to Thug Nasty here. I still look at Topuria as a little bit of a cocky young kid, and I think he's going to learn a little something on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's what really is interesting to me, that they make Mitchell the small dog here at plus $1.20, and Topuria right now the minus 140 betting favorite. 25 years young for Topuria, obviously. Bryce Mitchell, who's been inactive with some injuries here at 28. But you mentioned that height. Look at that there. He's got the 3-inch height advantage, but yet only a 1-inch reach advantage here. Is this a fight that we know the finishing potential that a Bryce Mitchell has, and certainly Topuria as well? Is this a fight that's going to go all 3 and hit the judges' scorecard? Do you think we got to hold on and don't blink in this one?
No, I think there's going to be a lot more rolling around on the canvas than people think. I tend to think this is a decision fight, and I don't know that it's got fight of the night, maybe performance of the night, because I think we're going to see 2 guys rolling as opposed to 2 guys striking.
And that's what we're always trying to figure out, is exactly what type of fight we think we might see here. Edmund Shabazian is back in this one. Shabazian right now minus 295 here in his matchup. Is that overpriced in your estimation as we go down the card a little bit and get to some of the prelim fights?
I think when we look at this fight after the fight, we'll think that it's appropriately priced. The change in gym from a toxic location to a very positive location with fighters his size that can compete with him on different levels, on different specialties, fight specialties, I think is going to really benefit Shabazian. He's athletic, young, strong. Both these guys enter having lost their last three, so we're going to get plenty of desperation. I think Lungiambula has been in with a lesser pedigree of fighter, and he's more a one-trick pony with power, whereas Shabazian's a much more well-rounded mixed martial artist. And I think his time at Extreme Couture with Coach Nixick is going to show in a really exciting, dynamic form.
And again, it's tough when you look at Edmund here, 10 years, the junior in this fight, and also a 4-inch height advantage, although 2 inches he's giving up in reach. But again, you can understand why right now at minus 295, he is that big-time favorite. I do want to go back here to some of the fights that we talked about on Tuesday and see if anything's changed for you during the weigh-ins here. We talked about Darren Till against Duplessis, as you always do the proper pronunciation here. What do you make of what you saw today on the scales? Anything that would lead you to a different direction? Because I know you like Duplessis here when we talked on Tuesday. Right now, he's minus $1.80 in the betting market.
Yeah, that's a much different price than what I realized. And so this is going to be a much more competitive fight than people think. I firmly believe we're going to get the absolute best that Till can provide. But I think what Duplessis is just a little too explosive and too strong for Darren Till. And I think that we'll probably see Darren Till move along and have to step aside for a younger, more violent fighter in the South African Duplessis.
Yeah, and that's the thing here. You look at the ages, 29 and 28, but it does feel like Darren Till maybe a little bit longer inside that octagon here. And you look at some of the price points here for some of the prop scenarios here, Lou. Is there a method of victory that you might like Duplessis by? KO, TKO, or DQ right now, plus 165. We know Till wants to throw those hands. By sub, plus 450. Bit of a longer shot there. By decision, plus 350. Is this one of those you might not want to get too cute with the method of victory?
Well, the total tells you one of these two guys is going to touch the other. Which one do you think it's going to be? I'm going to take the more explosive, seemingly fresher fighter in Duplessis.
And you can get plus money there at plus $1.65 on the younger fighter by 1 year over Darren Till. I do want to get to a couple of the fights here very quickly. Obviously, whenever Paddy Pimblett's on a card, Lou, something you and I again talked on Tuesday, boy, he's been bet up through the, once this card was announced against Jared Gordon here, he's now up to 245 as a betting favorite against Jared Gordon, plus 205. Those two guys got into it a little bit, certainly in the media discussions there. At the weigh-ins, any tells that you might have seen from Paddy Pimblett in the biggest stage so far in his young octagon career?
No, I think he's handling it great. He's a mature young kid, really away from the octagon, intelligent and articulate, and I think he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's providing seats and eyeballs for the UFC, and he's going to get paid for doing that. He just has to win. I think he's in a good position in this fight.
Yeah, so again, minus 245 there. You see he's 7 years the junior of Jared Gordon here. Everything else, pretty much the reach advantage rather large there for Paddy Pimblett. So we've seen Pimblett now. He did get a submission not too long ago. Now, again, KO, TKO, or DQ plus 275. Is there any price point that you might want to look to the plus price tag instead of laying that big number with Paddy?
Yeah, I'd be interested in either the inside the distance or the plus 275 KO, TKO, DQ. Pimblett has voiced angst that he isn't being taken seriously. So we could get, we could see some of his power. He's a big kid.
He is a big kid. And right now, as the co-main event, the biggest spot here for Paddy Pimblett. So we'll see if he can get it done. The betting market certainly thinks he will do just that. You got Alex Morono on this card against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio right now, minus $1.80. Morono right now, plus $1.55. What do you make of this matchup here as we stay on the main card?
I think both Alexes on this card are live. I think Morono is live, and he matches up better with Ponzinibbio than people might expect. He's durable, tough.
Yeah, certainly Morono right now. Yeah, plus $1.55
here. Alex Hernandez.
Alex Hernandez right now plus $1.40 against Billy Quarantino. So both Alexes in Lou's estimation are certainly live in this fight as well. Again, really, when you have a card like this, when you have a pay-per-view UFC 282 at this caliber, you're going to have some great fights. Chris Curtis right now, plus $1.45 against Joaquin Buckley. Of course, Buckley with one of the best highlight knockouts we've seen in the last couple of years in the UFC. So it's a very, very deep card. And again, Lou, if we have you back very quickly as we wrap this up, just tell the people what they get when they tune in each and every week to the Bout Business Podcast.
16 to 18 minutes of my final releases. Hopefully the technology that I have for the Bout Business podcast is better than the technology I'm using right now. I apologize to the producers and the listeners. I hope everybody has a great fight night, and thanks for tuning in.
Modern technology escapes me as well sometimes, Lou, so all good. I think we're picking up what you're putting down. Again, check out the Bout Business podcast. He also has his releases here if you're a VSiN Pro subscriber, and you can access those at vsin.com. Always appreciate Lou Finocchiaro joining us here each and every week on First Strike. But when we come back, we're going to go to the great city of Chicago, and Jordan Sherwood will be standing by in the second city, and we'll get his thoughts as well as we get ready for what should be a very exciting UFC 282. Come on back. First Strike here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you plenty of ways to bet the UFC. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You're going to be able to bet on more than just the main event. DraftKings has great odds on fight lines, total rounds, and futures for all MMA events. Eligibility restrictions to apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for the full terms and conditions. We roll on this edition of First Strike here. Dave Ross live at Circus Sportsbook in Las Vegas. Always good to catch up with our guy, Jordan Sherwood, back in the great city of Chicago. Again, you can follow him as I do at Wood on ESPN 1000. Jordan, welcome back to the program, my friend. Hey, it's the final one of the year, then we all get a break. But it feels like a big one, obviously, when you get the a strap on the line here. The light heavyweight championship is on the line here. What do you make of the main event here? Because I think some people believe that Ankalaev, maybe Jan Blachowicz getting a little bit long in the tooth, 39 versus 30. Is it the age? Is that the number one factor for you? Because I know Blachowicz has seen everything potentially that you can see in this division.
I know. I think it's probably coming to fruition, the crowning of a champion that was probably going to happen maybe at the end of 2023. I think everybody pegged Magomed Ankalaev as the next big thing in the light heavyweight division. He came in with a lot of notoriety, and albeit he slipped up with 1 second remaining in his UFC debut, now he's on a 9-fight win streak. He's got the rare combination of great striking, outstanding wrestling. He's proven that he's got some strong cardio, and he has gone through every single challenge that's been presented to him. And obviously before the Glover and Yuri news, this was going to be a title eliminator fight where if Magomed was able to get past, the former champion Jan Blachowicz, he was going to earn his right to go after the strap at light heavyweight. So I just think he gets crowned, quicker than what we thought. I think he's better just everywhere than Jan Blachowicz. Wherever this fight's going to go, he's going to have an advantage. Clearly has an advantage on the feet with the variety of striking, how patient he is at times. And if he needs to take this fight to the ground, we've seen Jan, obviously get overwhelmed and get against superior grappling like he was against Glover Teixeira. My issue is that, does Magomed make a mistake? Because if he does, Jan Blachowicz is there to take advantage of that. We saw that in the fight against Corey Anderson. We saw that in the fight against Dominic Reyes when Jan became the champion. So he's got the experience, the Polish power does. But Dave, I think clearly, even at a minus 300, the value is on Magomed Ankalaev. He's the rightful champion now at 205, and he's going to earn it tomorrow night.
The total rounds here, 3.5. Again, juiced a little bit to the under at minus $1.25. The over here, minus $1.05. I know sometimes you go, if you want to respect the former champion in Blachowicz, maybe you play the over, thinking that he can extend this fight Is there danger in that theory here? Because look, when Blachowicz even go against the fight against Israel Adesanya, right? He did wrestle, and he kind of wore out the smaller guy that was coming up that day. Would he want to think about trying to do that? Because, you know, the Polish power, you think about the hands. Is there any safe haven for Jan if he does try to take this to the fight and extend it a little bit by going down to the mat?
Yeah, it might be smart for him to prolong the rounds and try and see if Magomed can carry his power, his cardio into the championship rounds, because obviously Jan's been there. You know, Ankalaev, you know, certainly has not. But I think the safest play on the total is under 4.5. I do think we get a finish. Either the great power that Jan Blachowicz possesses, or what I think is going to happen is a takedown some point in the first, second, third round, and then Magomed just overwhelms Jan Blachowicz and gets him out of there via submission or ground and pound. So I think the safest play is under 4.5, which is, you know, $1.70, so a little bit of juice there. But that's going to be my recommendation. I think we get a finish. I think it's Ankalaev that gets the finish. But certainly, if you believe that Jan Blachowicz has one more nice, you know, run in him, then you play that as well.
You know, Jordan, certainly, obviously, that's the main event, right? But it feels like if you've been watching the promotion leading up to this UFC 282 card, it feels like everybody's talking about Paddy Pimblett, right? This is the biggest spotlight for him now in his UFC career as the co-main event, taking on Jared Gordon, and it's been bet up accordingly. Now up to 245 here. What do you make of Paddy? Because I think we all kind of said, is it too much too soon? Is he all flash and no substance? But maybe the substance is starting to come around a little bit. He does have some physical advantages here. One, he's 7 years younger. Two, he's got a 5-inch reach advantage. What do you make of Pimblett in this spot against Gordon? And there's some bad blood now between these two guys, apparently.
Yeah, well, actually, I'd argue that there's more bad blood between him and Ilya Tapura, and they might, you know, end up meeting each other if both are successful tomorrow night. I think those in the know, those in the industry know that Paddy Pimblett is probably not as good as he's perceived to be, or at least the public believes that he is. But he's got a great personality. He's obviously got the backing of Dave Portnoy and Barstool, so he's got that popularity as well. And this is the right fight for him. Like, Jared Gordon's a good fighter. He's got talent all around. He's been in there with Charles Oliveira, and he trains with Belal Muhammad and Paul Felder. So it's the right next test for Paddy Pimblett. And I really thought that this moment was going to be too much for Jared Gordon, having the spotlight on him. He's been fine all fight week. We'll see how he acts tomorrow night. But I think once again, Paddy Pimblett's going to overwhelm him. This is another calling card, a fight that Paddy Pimblett should win, should get through that first round and then get a takedown. And I think actually a submission prop is in play. We saw Jared Gordon succumb to submission his last time out against Grant Dawson. I understand that was the only time that we've seen Jared Gordon get submitted, and he's a good wrestler. Paddy's been in trouble the last two fights we've seen him against not superior competition, but I think they are slowly rolling out the Paddy Pimblett show, and this is the perfect fight for him, a guy that he should overwhelm. And I like the under, and I think Paddy Pimblett gets the job done inside the distance. His athletic talent, the age that you mentioned, Dave, is going to be enough for me to believe he gets his hand raised tomorrow night in convincing fashion.
I got to tell you, I've been burning a couple of these props, trying to figure out the pathways of victory for Paddy. Plus 275 KO, TKO, DQ, plus $2 here for sub. And you go, oh, he's not going to get a sub. Well, he got it a couple times out when I thought he'd get the KO, TKO. So he's very versatile, both on the mat and certainly with his hands. They seem to be improving for Paddy Pimblett. I do want to get to a very intriguing fight. Hey, look, whenever you have Darren Till back on a card, very popular fighter, obviously. But going up against a guy, Dricus du Plessis here, who feels like he can fight fire with fire. I don't know if you want to get in a hands contest with Darren Till, but what type of fight do you see? And du Plessis right now is minus $1.80. Darren Till, a solid underdog at plus $1.55.
Yeah, I think it's actually recency bias that has bet this line down. I think a lot of people thought du Plessis, the last time we saw him, was going to overwhelm Brad Tavares. And we know what Brad Tavares is. He's an outstanding 185er, been in the UFC forever, good gatekeeper. And he lasted, 3 rounds with du Plessis, and du Plessis was in trouble at times, and Tavares leaned on his wrestling. That's not going to be the case with Darren Till. Darren Till doesn't possess that wrestling, that grappling that could cause some problems for du Plessis. He's going to give the fight that du Plessis wants, and that's stand and trade and see if you knock each other out. Darren Till looked good on the scale. He's been saying all the right things. People, point to he's training with Khamzat Chimaev. That's very good. but the dude is 1-4 in his last 5 fights. He's not the same fighter that earned the title shot against Tyron Woodley in the welterweight division. And I think the athleticism, the power that Duplessis is going to have is going to overwhelm Darren Till. And I think we get a stoppage. I think Duplessis gets back on track to this hype train that he's behind. A lot of young guys with hype trains on this fight card all throughout the fight card. And I think Duplessis is one of them. And he's going to look impressive. Just too much talent, overwhelm. And I just don't trust Darren Till to be healthy, be right, even though he was solid on the scale earlier today. So I like Duplessis as straight up money line. And if you want to get creative, I think winning via KO, if you want that plus money, that's where you grab.
Yeah, that is plus money there. What, plus $1.45 if you like him by KO. So turn that negative into a positive. Let's get to the big boys here because we got Biggie Boy back in this card here with Jairzinho Rozenstruik against Chris Daukaus here. Biggie Boy right now a solid favorite, about minus $1.70. Daukaus right now plus $1.45 in the comeback. Do you think Rozenstruik just look? He's almost 20 pounds heavier than Chris Daukaus is in this fight. We know the speed is going to go to the underdog. What do you make of this heavyweight matchup?
Yeah, I really think that Biggie Boy just has to touch Daukaus once, and lights are going to go out. I don't know where Chris Daukaus is. I mean, look, his brother looked terrible last week. Daukaus is talking about moving down to 205 at some point, and we saw him get just overwhelmed by power against Derek Lewis. And I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik has a striking advantage. Great counter striker, is going to be able to land something at some point and change the trajectory of the fight. If you believe Daukaus, I mean, my official play on this is an under at 1.5. I think one of the guys' lights is going out at $1.70, but I think the straight money line on Jairzinho is also the smart play. I just think that it's going to take a lot more from Daukaus to knock out Rozenstruik than it is Rozenstruik to knock out Daukaus. So obviously anything can happen with heavyweights, but I'll lean on the power, that weight advantage, the counter striking, and the variety of striking that Biggie Boy can bring into the cage for him to get his hand raised over Chris Daukaus tomorrow night.
He is Jordan Sherwood. He is the host of the unnamed MMA podcast out of the great city of Chicago. Give it a listen. Jordan, we always appreciate your insights each and every week here on First Strike. Enjoy the fights. We'll catch up again once the UFC comes back, my friend. So enjoy your holiday break. There he is, everybody. Jordan Sherwood out of Chicago. When we come back, Dan Vreeland joins the program next to get his thoughts on UFC 282. Come on back. First Strike here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Start your morning with VSiN's newest podcast, VSiN Daily Morning Bets. Josh Applebaum gives you every piece of info you need to be ready for betting the day's biggest games in just 15 minutes. He discusses line movements, injuries, and what you need to be looking at before you make those wagers. So make the VSiN Daily Morning Bets podcast part of your morning routine. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Back here, First Strike, here in Las Vegas. Always a pleasure to be joined by Dan Vreeland right now, as we try to do each and every week. Dan, great to have you back on the program, my friend, this week. Hey, we're getting to UFC 282. We got a pay-per-view card here, so we know how deep these cards can be, and sometimes you can find some value, certainly going off the beaten path a little bit. Alex Morono against Santiago Ponzinibbio is a very intriguing match. We talked to Finocchiaro earlier in the program. He likes both Alexes potentially to be live here. What do you make of Morono right now as an underdog, plus $1.55? Ponzinibbio here, 36 years of age. Morono, 4 years his junior. Ponzinibbio minus $1.80.
You know, I really like Alex Morono, and I think the run he's been on has been super underrated. But I do worry about him against a guy like Santiago Ponzinibbio, because one of the things about Morono is Morono just puts a pace on people. You know, if you go back and look at some of the fights where he looked his absolute best, he's getting in people's face. He's turning it into a dogfight. And he's fighting these guys who, you know, no offense to the Cowboy Cerrones of the world, aren't guys who are going to take you out at this stage in their career. My problem here against Santiago Ponzinibbio is I'm not sure he can put that kind of pace on Santiago Ponzinibbio and be in his face and not get hit with some sort of nasty counter. Santiago Ponzinibbio hits like a truck. And in addition to that, you know, I heard a bunch of people saying, you know, this is going to be at a 180. You know, Morono is a weight bully, and that's great for him and all that kind of stuff. I actually think that this plays in favor of Santiago Ponzinibbio, who no longer really has to worry about his cardio being depleted because he doesn't have this massive weight cut to do that he had already been preparing for. So he's a guy who goes into this fight, winds up not having to cut hardly any weight because his weight was already pretty close to 180. And Morano's struggling to make weight. Morano is a guy who had to, put in the work to even get down to 180. So I think the dynamic of the cardio, which is one of Morano's best weapons, is now kind of taken away from him. So I actually like the favorite a lot in this one in Ponzinibbio.
All right, so Ponzinibbio right now, again, a bigger favorite here, but KO, TKO, or DQ plus 215. Sub seems like a long shot at 14-1. Win by decision plus $1.75. What method do you think is more than likely if Ponzinibbio is going to get his arm raised?
I kind of do like the decision prop.
Yeah.
While I do think he's going to crack him with a ton of counters, and he's really going to put Morano in a bad place a bunch of times. That dude is so durable. Like, that dude is taking some massive shots, and he seems to just walk through all of them. Now, I don't think he's going to, look particularly good at the end of the fight, but I don't think necessarily that Ponzinibbio is going to get him out of there.
All right, so maybe by decision could be a way to go, plus $1.75 for the favorite here in Ponzinibbio. Let's go to Billy Q against Alexander Hernandez here. Hernandez right now plus money in the comeback, plus $1.40. Billy Q, Billy Quarantino right now minus $1.85 is what I'm seeing here, minus $1.65 rather. What do you make of that price point for Billy Q? Is that a little bit too high for your liking?
It is a little bit too high for my liking, but one of the things I will say about Billy Q here is, like I said about Morano, he's a guy who puts pace on people, and not to continue to bring weight cutting back into the question here, but Alex Hernandez was a big 55er. He was a cut 55er. He looked huge at 55. He's coming down to 45 for this fight. I saw him on the scale. He looked like that. He looked absolutely awful on the scale. And for me, that's a big tell that is he going to be able to keep the same pace as Billy Q puts on his opponents? So yeah, I don't love Billy Q at negative 165, but I will say you want to go digging for a KO prop here because Alexander Hernandez, somebody who's already been knocked out, never mind going down weight where he's got to take that water out of his brain. Billy Q's a guy who finishes people with not just KOs, but with TKOs, ground and pound, good wrestling, all that kind of stuff. I love the pace he puts him on. Maybe a late KO here for Billy Q is probably a way you can extract some value out of that. Probably, you're right, a little bit too wide of a line.
I like that, though, where your head's at here, that we've seen Hernandez go out before. So if you don't want to play the bigger, lay that bigger price tag minus $1.65, look for that scenario that you could get a finish here by Billy Q as this fight goes deeper into the rounds, potentially 3-round matchup here on the undercard. It could be a very entertaining fight. Joaquin Buckley has had one of these showcase finishes that we've seen in the UFC in the last couple of years. Against Chris Curtis, and we know what type of fighter Chris Curtis is here. And right now, Buckley, minus $1.70 against Curtis. Is Curtis live as a dog at plus $1.45 in the comeback for the challenger?
1,000% he is. He's a huge live dog here. I love him in this spot. I had him in his debut for the upset. I had him in his Brandon Allen fight for the upset, and I've got him here in the Joaquin Buckley fight for the upset. Because the thing about Chris Curtis is, first of all, he's really durable. So we're going to put him in there against the guy who, pretty much relies on the KO, relies on the KO power, relies on hitting you hard. And you're going to put him in there with a guy who doesn't go out, right? Like you take Chris Curtis and you put him up against Phil Hawes. He took the best Phil Hawes has, turned around and knocked Phil Hawes out. He did the same thing with Brandon Allen. So yes, Joaquin Buckley hits harder than those two guys, but we got a guy already, good cardio with, good rebounding skills, with a good thick skull, exactly the type of thing you want here. And he's shown he can fight a smart fight. When you look at that Rodolfo Vieira fight, he stayed away from the grappling of Vieira. He made sure that he made it his kind of fight in that fight. Now, that didn't necessarily work out against Hermansson, which is why I think you see that line creeping up to where it is. But let me tell you, I don't think we're going to see Joaquin Buckley implement a similar game plan to Jack Hermansson. I think it's going to be a nice spot here for Chris Curtis.
Yeah, the Joker is just so awkward, right? Buckley should be a little bit more straightforward, you would think, for Chris Curtis in this matchup. And that was what frustrated Curtis in that fight against Jack Hermansson, is that he could not get the timing and the rhythm. So you think that's going to be in play here. If that's being said here, the over right now is minus $1.80 to go over a round and a half. Do you think a late KO could be in vogue here for Curtis at plus $3?
I actually think the under is probably a good play on that 1.5, because look, if Joaquin Buckley does win this fight, it is probably going to be quick and violent. And if you look at Chris Curtis's earliest fight, you look at his fight with Brendan Allen, you look at his fight with Phil Hawes, he got those guys out in under a round and a half. So, it wouldn't surprise me if Curtis could get the under there. and you'd probably safeguard yourself from, a Joaquin Buckley quick finish too.
I like where your head's at there, Dan, because plus $1.45 if this fight goes under that total of a round and a half. Look, I keep saying it here, Dan. I've been saying it all week too. It's, yes, I understand that we've got a championship in the light heavyweight division at stake, but it does feel like the showcase for Paddy Pimblett. Right now, he is the co-main event against Jared Gordon. They were talking some smack, had a little Conor McGregor vibe to it, like, who the blank is that guy? Pimblett right now is minus 245. We all know who he is. Is Jared Gordon the right opponent for Pimblett, or is there real danger here in this co-main event?
I think there's huge danger in this co-main event for Paddy Pimblett. And first of all, I think that price is ridiculous. Paddy Pimblett beating Luigi Vendramini and Jordan Levitt is not enough to make him a 2.5 to 1 favorite over a guy like Jared Gordon, who's been in there with Charles Oliveira and people like that. So first of all, I think there's huge problem with him being priced where he is. And second of all, I actually think I like the money line here on Jared Gordon. He's got great wrestling skills. It's not like he can't box. He's extremely hard to put away from time to time. Drawing a path to victory for Paddy Pimblett, I don't see the knockout on the feet. I know some people are bigger on Paddy Pimblett striking than I am. Do I see him subbing Jared Gordon? Probably not there either. So, this is going to, I think, to be a 15-minute knock him down, drag him out type fight. I also really love the Jared Gordon decision prop. This dude doesn't finish hardly anybody. Like, his last 6 wins are all by decision. So if you like Jared Gordon at plus 200, which, by the way, I already do, I love him at decision plus 450 because, hey, if he's going to win, that's where you're going to get him.
Yeah, because look at the pathways to victory for Gordon here as a dog. 7-1 for KO, TKO, or DQ, not likely. Sub 12-1. So I'm with you. If you like the dog here, instead of taking that over $2 price tag there, you can get 450 here. The most likely way for Gordon to get a victory is to outwork Paddy Pimblett over the course of the 3 rounds. Okay, because it is a title bout, I got to get your thoughts. Certainly on the main event, this card obviously has been jumbled around here. So you got Jan Blachowicz, a former champion, against Magomed Ankalaev. A lot of people believe that Ankalaev, the time is now, 30 versus 39. Is the age the number one concern for you? Or do you say, hey, Blachowicz has been in there with the best. He's been the champ. So there's nothing really that Ankalaev could throw at him that he hasn't really seen yet.
Yeah, I actually really like the underdog in this spot, too. I know I'm going underdog on the top of this card, but, man, I really do like Jan Blachowicz in this main event spot because, I think people see the name Magomed Ankalaev and automatically assume, a Dagestani guy is going to go in there and wrestle. But if you actually look at the stats behind what he's looked like in the wrestling game, he's actually fared pretty poorly offensively wrestling. His takedown accuracy in the UFC is 33%. He went 3-9 against Nikita Krylov, who I don't particularly think of as a great defensive wrestler. So, Jan Blachowicz has been in there with, like you said, some of the best dudes in the world. I mean, he stuffed half of Glover Teixeira's attempts. I think he can stuff plenty of Magomed Ankalaev's attempts. And when we talk about this fight being a standing trading fight, yeah, like Jan Blachowicz just stood in front of Israel Adesanya and kickboxed with him. Who is Magomed Ankalaev stood in front of that is giving us all this confidence about what he could do? Anthony Smith, a guy who I largely think of as a grappler and a jiu-jitsu specialist, Ion Kudalaba, his kickboxing hasn't passed the eye test to me, nor has, the opponents in the resume.
Dan, great stuff as always. Follow him on Twitter at Gambling Podcast. Gonna be Vreeland, but Gambling Podcast, Cage Side Press, Top Turtle MMA, SGPN MMA as well. Dan, great stuff as always. We'll catch up with you again very, very soon, my friend. When we come back, Reed Kuhn joins us from Washington, D.C. Next, First Strike on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Back here on First Strike, Dave Ross in Las Vegas. Reed Kuhn joins us each and every week from Washington, D.C. Reed, always great to have you back on the show. At Fightnomics is where you can follow him on Twitter. Also the author of a book of the same name. Reed is very cool. I saw you on Twitter giving out some props to people as your star has been blowing up as rightfully it should. But one name really caught me off guard. MC Hammer. Tell me about the relationship between Reed Kuhn and Don't Hurt Him Hammer.
Yeah, he was actually involved in the MMA industry for a hot minute. Founded a company called Alchemist Management that I was involved in, and we co-founded a company together about a decade ago. So he was one of the original people that saw my reports and said, "Hey, get this guy involved." I was doing scouting reports, competitive reports for a lot of fighters. And fun fact, like I actually ran into him just on the street in Oakland. I mean, that guy is famous in Oakland. He's the unofficial mayor of that town. Just to run into him on the sidewalk one day and, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I was like, I live here for a year. So yeah, good times back in the day, but he's not involved in MMA anymore. But it's one of those brushes with celebrity that's fun.
It's really cool. Yeah, he was an Oakland A's bat boy back in the day before he became, for my money, the best dancer we've ever seen in hip hop through the years for
still
MCM.
Is.
He can still go?
Amazing. Still amazing. The guy is on Twitter posting videos of himself at his age. It is amazing. He just has,
So cool. Very quickly too, because you do something very cool. I love my food. I love my drinks, but I'm not really good at pairing things. You have more of a sophisticated palate than I do. You host these big parties for big time events like UFC 282. What do you have on the menu for tomorrow?
If you actually read the fine print on my Twitter, it says pairing fine wine with UFC. I've had that there. No one's ever called me out for it. But yeah, I'm usually stress cooking on Saturday nights. But this time I'm inviting a whole bunch of people for the year-end blowout. I mean, this is the last pay-per-view of the year. It's usually a big card, celebratory. It's holidays. We're all decorated out. So yeah, like I've got a printed menu for the crew. I've got a VIP crew of Silicon Valley tech moguls, heroes and professional gamblers. It should be a fun crowd tomorrow night. So watch out for what we're up to.
Well, I'm glad I'm the first one to call you out for it, because that's absolutely amazing that you do that for the big fight cards. Look, while you're eating and pairing those wines together, we do have a pretty good card. Now, I want to get your thoughts on it. Let's start off with Billy Q against Hernandez here. And right now, it looks like Billy Q's been going up a little bit as the fight week has gone on. What do you make of this spot for Quarantino here? Do you think he's the rightful favorite at $1.65 over Alexander?
He's been hit or miss, and Alexander is dropping a weight class, so there's some uncertainty with that. But when you pair them up just by the numbers, ignore the weight class drop for Hernandez, he is going to be the more accurate. Well, I feel like he's not necessarily as accurate, but he's going to be landing more punches. The problem is Billy Q's defense. It is by far the worst on the entire card. For every 2 punches thrown at his head, he's eating one of them. And that is not something you want to do. And Hernandez has been very effective in causing damage and beating people up and getting those finishes. And if he's teeing off in Quarantino, I think that adds up. And so that tells me there's some upset potential. And that's agnostic of the weight class difference. So I add that as a bonus in where I'm willing to go on the underdog here. I see it as slightly better than a coin flip for Hernandez. And with that price, that means, yeah, I should be in on the underdog here.
Yeah, Alexander Hernandez right now, plus $1.40. And I love the way with the numbers that you find the value in that number. And again, when it's more than a coin flip of plus $1.40 with the punching potential that he has against Billy Q, who's easy to hit, I'm picking up what you're putting down right there. Chris Curtis is a very interesting guy here at 185 pounds against Joaquin Buckley. Again, you think of Buckley, you think of the showcase finish with the spinning leg kick after his other leg was trapped, and he gets that incredible finish. People think of that. But Curtis is a guy that can be very, very crafty for a guy who looks like a loose and free fancy fighter. What style of fight do you think you're going to see from Curtis at plus $1.45, and is he live in your opinion?
So Chris Curtis has never attempted a takedown, and he hasn't had to, right? His hands have been getting it done for him. But similar story here. The red flag for me is the fact that he eats a lot of punches. He actually dishes out quite a lot. He's an accurate striker, but he eats a lot in return. Now, that hasn't been too much of a problem for him, but now he's facing Buckley. Buckley has the highest power share of strikes of anybody on this card. So the vast majority of the time, he's swinging for the fences. He's throwing big strikes, kicks, big power punches. He doesn't mess around with the jab. When he throws, he's all in. And that is something that Curtis cannot play around with. And he doesn't really have the ground game to retreat to. And Buckley does have a bit of a ground game. So that's why I think Buckley is a deserving favorite here. This is definitely a situation I'll be sweating a little bit playing the favorite because Curtis just has been so effective. But I do think Buckley has the ingredients to finish this.
And get plus $1.50 if you like Buckley by KO, TKO, or DQ here. Sub is certainly a long shot at 22-1, and a decision plus 275. So it does feel like a win by finish is plus $1.40, which I think Reed sees some value in those numbers, certainly for Buckley here at that plus price tag. When you look at Dawkins against Rosenstrike here, look, Biggie Boy, we know he's going to have a physical advantage against Chris Daukaus in here, almost about 20 pounds heavier than Daukaus. But what do you make of Rosenstruck in this favorites role here at minus $1.70? Is he just too big for Daukaus, who will be the quicker man inside that octagon?
I think it's fair to say he should be the favorite. But again, you're always looking at what is that win probability and what is the market saying the price is. And I think maybe there is some value on Daukaus. This is going to be a coin flip fight. I'm going to take the plus money. But when I line them up and just ignore who they are, Daukaus has the better striking metrics, believe it or not. He actually has a higher per strike knockdown rate than Rosenstruck. And Daukaus is way more accurate. So on paper, if I didn't know who these guys were, I would be like, wait a minute, fighter B, the underdog here, clearly has a good shot. Then you factor in, all right, well, now I know Jairzinho has blasted some of the biggest names in the game. So I'll back off a little bit. It also concerns me. Daukaus still has a full-time job. He's a police officer. Is he training full-time? He doesn't look like the most in-shape heavyweight. But purely on paper, I got to go with the numbers here. I think Daukaus does have a backup plan to go to the ground. And when they're striking, he is going to be the sharper striker. So I'll take that if I'm getting plus money.
And you are getting that plus money right now. And hey, look, it's a great story for Daukaus. Everybody knows it. But as you mentioned, sometimes you go, man, I hope he's still in the gym training as much, because we know he has a real job outside of the octagon. But you look at that, plus 225 by KRT, KRDQ. I think a lot of people might shy away from that prop read and say, well, does Daukaus have the power to hurt Biggie Boy? Do the numbers support that? Or do you think more decision, which is a real long shot at plus 750 to win it in 3 rounds?
Yeah, it's not always raw power. Some guys have a punching style where they cause knockdowns a little bit more effectively. And I'd really have to go to the videotape to confirm this, but some people are just better at going crosswise across the chin. They lead to more concussions. It drops people rather than straight punchers. So I'm going to look at the numbers. It says he has dropped people faster than Jairzinho. And maybe that's a question of the talent they were facing. But on a pure strike basis, Daukaus is good at finding that chin and putting people down. So I would take that. This is a heavyweight fight. They both have elevated levels of knockdown rates, and yet Daukaus is even higher than Rosenstruck. So, yeah, I think it's a valid play, especially since he's an underdog. You're going to get big plus money on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The numbers do support it. That's why we always love talking to you, Reed, about this, because you look at this stuff analytically. I do want to get to Ponzinibbio against Alex Morono here. Morono, I feel like our panel's a little bit split on this. What are the numbers showing you here when you look at two guys that I'm sure you have a lot of volume to choose from?
Similar story here. I'm seeing value in a lot of underdogs. It's not huge value. This is a coin flip fight to me, and I will take the plus money. The same story applies here. Don't love that he's taking this on short notice, but he has been in there a while against consistently decent talent. He is a very effective striker. You know, he's accurate. He keeps up a pace. He keeps up good defense. It's that wild card, the X factor of Ponzinibbio. He has found finishes in strange places. He looked amazing for a while, and then lately he's been on a losing streak. So which guy are we going to see here? That's a question mark. But once again, you go for situations where this could go either way. You see a path to victory for an underdog. You're getting plus money. One of these or two of these is going to hit for me.
And that's kind of the point here. When you're finding true value in these dogs, you don't have to hit every one. You just have to hit a couple, and that's going to turn your night into a positive night here from the betting aspect. I wonder in the main event, 'cause we've got about 90 seconds to go, when you look at Ankalaev against Jan Blachowicz here, the former champion Blachowicz, 9 years now older than Magomed here, is this now the passing of the torch? Or do you think Blachowicz still has one great fight left in him?
I think this is a passing of the torch. Ankalaev is dual threat. He's been rolling people. He's younger. He's more accurate. He's more powerful. And he has this ground game that can be dominant when he wants it to be. So I think he is the dual threat here. This is a bad matchup for Blachowicz. I think I've seen price inflation all week. It's almost getting ridiculous. He started off a lot more reasonable. So play him early, play him fast, put him in a parlay if you have to. But I like Ankalaev here.
Got about 30 seconds. Do the numbers support an underplay? 3.5 is what we're seeing. Some shops have 4.5 here. Or do you think Blachowicz can at least extend this fight?
I think 3.5 is about where I would put it, because I don't think it'll end early. Blachowicz is very tough. I do think Ankalaev is eventually going to pile up some damage and put him in a bad spot. I'm looking at a late finish, so I'm going to go fight does not go the distance, or Ankalaev inside the distance.
10 seconds to go, Reed. Can you have white wine with steak?
No, of course not. We're doing a battle carb Cabernet tomorrow.
Just wanted to make sure. He's the best. Reed Kuhn, everybody. Want to thank Dan Vreeland, Jordan Sherwood, and Lou Finocchiaro for joining the program. Enjoy the fights. UFC 282. We'll see you next week right here. It is First Strike on VSiN. Thanks for watching First Strike. Of course, subscribe on YouTube, and we always have First Strike First Look for you each and every Tuesday as we give you the best of the numbers before we get to First Strike each and every Friday. So download on iHeart, Apple, or your favorite podcast. Thanks for watching First Strike on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.